The strongest man at Iron Meridian pointed a chalked finger at the woman mopping the platform and told the whole floor she was too weak to touch the bar she was cleaning. His name was Dyson Meacham, and he said it loud enough for the cameras, loud enough for the 40 people who had stopped their sets to watch. And he said it while she was on her knees with a rag, wiping his sweat off the deck he had just deadlifted on. "Too heavy for you," he said. "Watch me." And he loaded the bar to 600 and pulled it once and dropped it so the plates jumped. And the woman on her knees did not look up, and the room laughed. And someone's phone caught all of it. And by morning it had 100,000 views with a caption that called her the janitor who thought she was a lifter. Her name was Odessa Naylor. Nobody in that building knew what those two words meant. That is where this begins. And you already know something the whole gym does not, so hold it. 6 weeks earlier, she had walked into Iron Meridian through the loading door in the back, because that was the door the night crew used. The gym was new, all raw concrete and black steel, and a wall of glass 2 stories high that looked out on a parking lot nobody had planned to make beautiful. It smelled of fresh rubber flooring and the ghost of paint. Odessa liked the rubber smell. It reminded her of a smaller room in another state, a room with a leaking roof and a coach who had taught her that the barbell did not care who your father was, or how much money you had, or what anyone thought when they looked at you. The barbell only asked one question, he used to say. Did you do the work? That was the whole religion. The coach's name was Wendell Outlaw, and he had been dead 11 months. And she had come to this city to keep a promise she had made to him in a hospital room that smelled of nothing at all. The manager who hired her did it over the phone and never looked at her application closely enough to see the line that would have changed everything. She had left that line blank on purpose. She wrote custodial experience and front desk experience, both true, and she did not write national champion, because a national champion applying to mop floors is a story people want to poke at, and she was too tired to be a story. She wanted the night shift. She wanted the quiet. She wanted a paycheck and a key, and the hour after closing when the lights dimmed to half, and the whole floor belonged to her and the bar. Her shoulder was the reason. 14 months ago, at a meet in a convention hall with bad light, she had felt something in her right shoulder let go on a heavy pull, a sound only she could hear, a giving way like a rope losing one strand. The surgeon called it a labral tear and a partial tendon thing with a long name, and told her that lifting at her old weights again was possible but not promised, and that the difference between healing and ruining it forever was patience, and patience was the one thing the meat circuit did not sell. So she left. She let the sponsor contract lapse. She let the ranking go. She told the people who knew her that she was taking time, and time turned into a year, and the year turned into a woman mopping a platform in a city where no one had ever watched her lift. But she had made Wendell a promise. Understand the promise, because the whole story hangs from it. In that last room, with the machines counting down his heartbeats, he had held her good hand and asked her for one thing. He had a number. His whole life he had chased a deadlift number he never reached, a number that had beaten him at 3 meets across 3 decades, a number that had become a private joke and a private grief between the two of them. He asked her to pull it, not for a crowd, not for a medal, for him, once, clean, so that the number would exist in the world in a body he had trained. She had said yes. She had said the number out loud so he could hear her say it. Then he was gone, and the number lived in her like a stone she carried in her chest, and her shoulder had to heal enough to carry it out. That was why she took nights. That was why, after the floor was clean and the last member gone, she would chalk her hands in the half-dark and pull. Never heavy, never near the number. just enough to keep the pattern alive in her nervous system while the tendon knit itself back. An inch of progress a week, the slowest work she had ever done. The security camera in the corner watched her do it and told no one, because a camera is only a witness if someone chooses to look. Now meet the man who would make her break the rules. Dyson Meacham was the face of Iron Meridian. He was 30 and built like the posters he posed for, and he had 400,000 followers who watched him lift heavy things and say cruel things about people who could not. The gym paid him to be there. His presence filled classes. His videos tagged the location. When the owner, a smooth-handed man named Alton Kingsford, who had put his savings into this building, looked at Dyson, he did not see a person. He saw traffic. He saw the reason the lease might survive its first hard year. So when Dyson wanted a member's membership frozen for filming him wrong, it was frozen. When Dyson wanted the good platform reserved for his content hours, it was reserved. Kingsford had built a small kingdom and handed the sharpest man in it a knife and told himself it was branding. Odessa knew Dyson the way the invisible know the scene. She cleaned up after him. She wiped the deck where he trained. She emptied the chalk buckets he left overflowing. For weeks he did not know her face, only the uniform, only the mop. That is its own kind of nakedness, to be looked through by a person you could outlift on your worst day. She let it happen. Patience was the religion. The stone in her chest could wait. The first time he spoke to her directly, it was cold, in the sense the engine of this story uses the word. She was on the platform after close, alone, pulling a light single with the empty bar and 2 small plates, feeling the shoulder, reading it the way Wendell had taught her to read a shoulder, listening for the strand that might let go. Dyson had come back for a bag he forgot. He stood in the dark by the door and watched her set up, and she did not know he was there. He watched the way she gripped, the way she set her back, the way her feet found the floor, and something in him, some animal that recognized a real predator, went still and uneasy for 1 second. Then he decided he had imagined it. She was the janitor. He picked up his bag and left, and she never knew he had seen, and you know it. And that is the dread the cold confrontation is built to plant. He had seen the truth and talked himself out of it. That refusal would cost him everything, and he had no idea. There was another person watching that would matter more than Dyson. Her name was Marigold Tillery, and she was a trainer at Iron Meridian, part of Dyson's orbit, one of the coaches he let stand near his light. She was 38 and good at her job and quiet about the things she saw, because the things she saw paid her rent. Marigold ran the early classes and the youth clinics and the beginner programs that Dyson thought were beneath him, and she had learned to survive in his gym by keeping her eyes down and her opinions in her pocket. She was the one who reviewed the security footage on Monday mornings, part of a manager task Kingsford had handed off to save himself the tedium. One Monday, she scrubbed through the weekend nights on fast forward and stopped on a frame. A woman alone on the platform at midnight. She rewound. She watched the setup. She was not a competitive lifter, but she had been around enough of them to know what she was looking at. And what she was looking at did not match the woman with the mop. The bar path was too clean. The bracing was too automatic. This was not a person exercising. This was a person who had done this 10,000 times under judges. Marigold sat back in the office chair and felt the first crack of a question she did not want. She said nothing. Remember that she said nothing, because it will matter what it costs her later to finally speak. The wound opened on a Tuesday, in daylight, in front of the room. Odessa had picked up an extra shift, a morning, covering for a sick coworker, and Kingsford had told her to wipe down the competition platform before Dyson's 10 o'clock filming block. She was doing exactly that when Dyson arrived early with 2 friends and a phone on a tripod. He wanted the platform. She was still on it, on her knees, finishing the last quarter. He could have waited 90 seconds. Instead, he saw an opportunity, because a man who lives on views is always hunting for the next one, and here was a soft target on her knees in a uniform. He started filming before he started talking. That is the detail that mattered later. He set the shot, he checked his own hair in the reflection, and then he pointed at her and performed. He asked the camera if it knew what the difference was between people who lift and people who clean up after people who lift. He said some people were built for the bar, and some people were built to mop around it. He told her to hurry up because real work was about to happen. His friends laughed. A dozen members had drifted over because a Dyson shoot was a small event. Odessa kept wiping. She had decided long ago that her dignity was not a thing he could take by talking, only a thing she could give away by answering, and she would not give it away. But then he did the thing that crossed the line the engine requires, the cruelty aimed at someone the listener already cares about. There was an older man near the platform, a member named Grover Waddle, 71, a retired shop teacher who came every morning and pulled light and slow and proud, and who had told Odessa once, in passing, that his late wife had loved to watch him get stronger. Grover had wandered close to watch the shoot. Dyson turned the camera on him. He asked Grover to demonstrate, quote, how the other half trains. He loaded a bar to a weight he knew was a joke, and gestured for Grover to pull it. And when the old man, flustered and eager to be a good sport, bent over it and could not move it, Dyson narrated the failure for 400,000 people. He zoomed on the old man's face. He said, "This is what happens when you think the bar owes you something." The room laughed at Grover. Grover straightened up with a smile that was trying very hard, and something in his eyes went to a place old men's eyes go when they are reminded the world has decided they are finished. Odessa stood up off her knees. Everyone expected her to leave. She wanted to. The stone in her chest told her to keep the promise clean and walk. But she looked at Grover's face, and she saw Wendell's face in a different failure years ago, and she did a small thing instead. She walked to the loaded bar, and without a word, she stripped the joke weight off it, and she reset it to a weight an old man could pull with dignity. And she looked at Grover and said quietly, so only the near ones heard, "Your grip is fine, drive the floor away." And Grover sat up again and pulled it, clean, 3 times, and stood up taller, and the small crowd that had laughed a moment ago did not know what to do with itself. Dyson did not like that. On his camera, the janitor had just fixed his content. He turned the lens on Odessa and asked her, sneering, if she was a coach now, if the mop had made her an expert. And Odessa, who had promised herself she would not answer, answered with 4 words. She said, "I know a lift." That was all. Then she picked up her bucket and walked off the platform, and Dyson posted the clip that night with a caption mocking the cleaning lady who gives lifting advice, and the internet did what the internet does. Now the escalation begins, and the balance zigzags, and no round goes the way the last one did. The first hot round came the next morning. Kingsford called Odessa into the glass office and did not offer her a seat. He had seen the clip. He had seen the comments. He told her that employees do not touch members' equipment, do not coach on the floor, do not become part of the content. He framed it as a rule. It was a leash. He cut her hours, moved her fully to the deep overnight when almost no one was in the building, and told her that the platform was off limits to her entirely now, even after close, because Dyson had complained that his content platform had a janitor's chalk on it. That last part was a lie Dyson had fed him and Kingsford had swallowed, and it landed on Odessa like a door closing on her hand. The platform after close was where she kept the promise alive. Without it, the tendon would stall, the pattern would fade, the number would drift further out of reach. She said nothing in the office. She took the cut. But walking out, she understood that the man who mocked her had just, without knowing it, put himself between her and the last thing she owed the dead. That is the kind of enemy the engine wants. He was not hurting a janitor. He was standing on Wendell's grave and did not know the name on the stone. The cold round followed, and it belonged to Marigold. She had watched the office through the glass. She had heard the platform lie, because she knew for a fact Dyson had never once complained about chalk. Dyson left more chalk than any 3 members combined. She went back to the footage that night, alone, and this time she went looking. She found more midnight sessions. She watched Odessa pull, week over week, a little heavier each time, always stopping early, always careful, and she watched the shoulder, the way Odessa favored it, the way she tested it before every set, and Marigold, who trained injured people for a living, understood 2 things at once. This woman was a serious lifter, and this woman was hurt, and she was rehabbing herself in secret in the dark, because it was the only place she was allowed to exist. Marigold did something small and cold and consequential. She did not tell anyone, but she stopped deleting the weekend footage the way the retention policy said to. She started saving it to a drive in the office. She told herself she did not know why. You know why. She was building a record, and she had not yet admitted to herself that she was building it against the man who signed off on her schedule. The second hot round was worse, and this time Odessa lost more ground. Dyson, writing the engagement from the janitor clips, decided to make her a recurring character. He began narrating her when she cleaned. He would be mid-set with an audience, and he would gesture at her across the floor and make a bit of it, the ghost who wishes she could lift, and the audience, primed by the videos, played along. He never touched her. He was too smart for that. He used the room as the weapon, turned 40 strangers into a laugh track, and every night she carried her bucket through a gauntlet of people who had learned her as a punchline before they ever learned her as a person. She took it. But the taking cost her something the listener can feel accumulating. Each night, the stone in her chest got heavier and the promise got quieter, because it is hard to keep a sacred thing alive in a body that a room has agreed to laugh at. The next cold round connected 2 things the listener had thought separate, which is the connection turn the engine requires. Marigold, still saving footage she told herself meant nothing, noticed a pattern in the day files, not just the nights. She noticed that Dyson's mockery of Odessa always spiked right before he posted a paid promotion. She pulled his public posts and laid them next to the gym's own analytics that Kingsford shared with the trainers, and she saw it. The janitor content was not random cruelty. It was a strategy. The humiliation videos drove the numbers that Dyson sold to his sponsors and that Kingsford used to justify the rent. Odessa's degradation was a line item. 2 men were making money off a woman on her knees, and one of them was the man who had cut her hours to keep the content clean. Marigold sat with that in the dark office and understood that she was no longer a bystander who happened to see. She was a person who knew, and knowing has a price the moment you decide whether to pay it. She still did not speak, understand what she stood to lose, because the engine demands you feel it before she acts. Marigold had come up hard. She had no degree, no savings, a mother in assisted living whose bills she covered, and a career that existed entirely inside gyms owned by men like Kingsford. If she crossed Dyson, she did not just lose a job. She lost the reference, the network, the whole ladder, In a city where the fitness world was small and everyone knew everyone, she had spent 15 years learning to survive by not seeing. Now she saw, and the seeing kept her up at night. And still she said nothing. And every night she said nothing was a night Odessa carried the bucket through the laughing room. The third hot round is the one from the thumbnail, and it is the real failure the engine places near the 3/4 mark. It happened on a Friday, the busiest night, and Dyson engineered it, though Odessa walked into it with her eyes open, which is its own kind of tragedy. He had been building to it. He announced, on camera, to a full floor, that he was tired of the ghost who thought she knew lifting, and he issued a challenge dressed as a joke. He loaded a bar and said that if the cleaning lady thought she knew so much, she could show them all a real pull right now, or admit she was nothing but a mop. The room turned to her. 40 phones came up, and Odessa, who had endured 6 weeks of patience, who had a stone in her chest and a promise to the dead and a shoulder that was not ready, felt the whole thing crack. She should have walked. The listener wants her to walk. Instead, the humiliation and the grief and the pride all fused into one bad decision, and she stepped onto the platform she was forbidden to touch, and she chalked her hands, and she sat up on a bar that was heavy, not near her old max, but far past what a healing tendon should ever be asked to hold cold, with no warm-up, in front of a room that wanted her to fail. She set her back. She drove the floor away. The bar came up to her knees, and the shoulder let go, not all the way, not the full tear again, but the strand parted. The same sound only she could hear, and her right arm gave a half-inch, and the bar tipped, and she had to drop it. And she went down to one knee on the platform with her arm hanging wrong, and the room, which had wanted a spectacle, got one. The phones caught the janitor who thought she was a lifter collapsing on the deck she cleaned. Dyson stood over her and did not offer a hand. He asked the camera how that tasted. Kingsford came out of the office not to help her, but to end her, because an employee had used the forbidden platform and gotten hurt on it, and that was an insurance nightmare with her name on it, and he fired her on the floor, in front of everyone, told her to clear her locker and turn in her key, and someone filmed that too. She sat in the loss. The engine says she must, and she did. She sat on the curb in the beautiful, accidental parking lot, with her arm in a makeshift sling, and understood that she had broken the promise with her own hands. The shoulder that was supposed to carry the number out of the world was worse now than the day she arrived. She had traded Wendell's last request for one moment of not being laughed at, and she had not even gotten that, because they were laughing harder than ever, 100,000 times over. This was the lowest point. There was no plan. There was no folder. There was no clever reversal waiting. There was just a woman on a curb who had failed the dead, and a phone in her pocket lighting up with strangers enjoying it. The last discovery, the piece that turns bad behavior into an undeniable system, came not to Odessa but to Marigold, and it broke her the rest of the way open. The morning after the firing, Marigold was told by Kingsford to do one specific thing: delete the weekend footage. All of it. He said it casually, said the platform incident was a liability, and the less that existed, the better. Said scrub the drives back 30 days to be safe. And Marigold understood, standing in the glass office, that she was being ordered to erase the only complete record of what had been done to Odessa Naylor. She went to the drive. She looked at the folder she had secretly been saving for weeks, the one she had told herself meant nothing. And she found, in the day files from the week before, one clip she had not fully watched, a moment between Dyson and Kingsford in the office with the door open and the floor mic live. In it, Kingsford asked Dyson if the janitor stuff was worth the trouble, and Dyson laughed and said the trouble was the point, that a woman crying on a platform outperformed every other kind of content 3-1, that he had been trying to bait her onto the bar for weeks because a failure would be his biggest video of the year. He had planned it. He knew she was hurt. He had said on a live mic that he was hunting for the moment her body gave out because it would pay. Marigold sat in the chair. She thought about her mother's bills. She thought about the reference she would never get, the doors that would close, the 15 years of learning not to see. Then she thought about an old man being told the bar owed him nothing, and a woman on her knees fixing his weight without a word. And she made the choice that costs her everything and fixes nothing cleanly, which is the only kind of choice this engine believes in. She did not delete the footage. She copied all of it. Then she did the thing that could not be undone. She found Odessa. The peak takes place 11 days later, and it is where the whole gym freezes. Iron Meridian held a grand opening event it had been planning for months, a public showcase to draw new members with a real barbell exhibition, and Kingsford had spent money he did not have to make it matter. He had invited a sanctioning body, a regional powerlifting federation, to bring officials and lend the event legitimacy. And he had built the whole afternoon around Dyson, his star, pulling heavy for a crowd and a live stream. The glass wall let the winter light in on a floor full of strangers, folding chairs, a competition platform under lights, a table of Federation officials in their polo shirts with their clipboards and their calibrated plates. Dyson was in his element. He did not know that 2 people in the building were about to end him. Odessa came in through the front door this time, not the loading dock. That was the first thing. She wore no uniform. Her arm was out of the sling but held with the care of someone managing an injury, and she walked to the Federation table and spoke to the head official, a compact silver-haired woman named Harriet Lofton, who had judged meets for 30 years. Odessa said her name. Just her name, Odessa Naylor. And Harriet Lofton, who had a memory for lifters the way some people have a memory for faces, went still and set down her clipboard and stood up because that name to her did not mean janitor. It meant a woman she had watched pull a national record in a convention hall with bad light 4 years ago. The official's recognition was the first crack of power entering the room, and it happened without a single announcement. Just an old judge rising to her feet for a name. The room did not understand yet. Dyson, warming up nearby, saw the janitor by the official's table and started toward her with a smile made for the camera, ready to make her his opening bit, ready to ask the crowd if the ghost had come to watch real lifters work. He got 3 words into it. Then Marigold stepped up beside Odessa with a laptop, and Harriet Lofton asked the room, in the flat, carrying voice of a woman who had run rooms for 3 decades, for everyone's attention, and the freeze the thumbnail promised began, because a Federation official does not raise her voice at a gym owner's event unless something is very wrong. Here the engine slows the peak to 1 piece at a time. Marigold opened the laptop and turned it so the officials could see, and she played the first thing, the office clip. Dyson on a live mic saying the trouble was the point, saying he had been baiting the hurt woman onto the bar for weeks because her failure would be his biggest video of the year. Dyson's public face did a thing it had never done on camera. He had a habit, a specific one, when he was caught off balance, of touching 2 fingers to his own collarbone as if checking that his body was still there, and he did it now. That private tell no follower had ever seen, and the crowd watched their poster come apart in real time. The room went to a stillness you could measure by the light. Outside the glass wall, a car pulled into the accidental beautiful parking lot, and its engine ticked as it cooled, and no one inside said a word. Marigold played the second thing. The analytics beside the posts, the paid promotions timed to the humiliation videos, the money laid next to the cruelty so that no one could pretend it was a personality flaw instead of a business. Kingsford, at the edge of the crowd, took a step backward toward his glass office, as if the office could still protect him, and the Federation official, Harriet Lofton, turned her head and looked at him. One look, and he stopped moving. The winter light moved a hand's width across the concrete floor. A folding chair, nudged by someone shifting their weight, scraped once and went silent. Then Odessa spoke, for the first time in that building above a murmur, and she told them who she was. Not as a boast, but as a fact the room needed in order to understand what had been done. She said her name again, and she said the record, and she said the meet, and she said the year, and Harriet Lofton confirmed each one aloud like a judge calling a good lift, because a fact witnessed by the sanctioning body is a fact the internet cannot laugh away. The crowd that had learned Odessa as a punchline learned her, in the space of a minute, as one of the strongest women the sport had produced, who had been mopping the floor they stood on while their poster narrated her failure for pay. Dyson tried to speak. He said it was content, that everyone knew it was a bit, that she had chosen to get on the bar. And here the engine lets him incriminate himself on his own stage. Because Marigold played the third thing, the platform footage from the Friday of the failure, slowed down, and in it you could hear Dyson, off to the side, before Odessa ever stepped up, saying to his friend, "Watch, she's hurt, she'll blow the shoulder, this is the one." He had known. He had said it out loud. He had hunted a woman's injury for a video, and now the video buried him. The light reached the base of the official's table. Somewhere a phone, forgotten in a bag, buzzed twice against a set of keys and stopped. Kingsford broke first, the way the enabling system always breaks before the star, turning on Dyson to save himself, saying he had not known, that Dyson had told him the platform complaints were real, that he had cut the woman's hours based on Dyson's word. And Dyson, cornered, turned on Kingsford, said the owner had loved the numbers, had asked for more of them, had counted the money same as him. The two men indicted each other in front of the Federation, and the crowd, and the live stream that was, though they had forgotten it, still running. And this is the peak the title promised. The whole system eating itself on the floor it built to celebrate itself. But the engine promised competition, and Odessa had come for more than an exposure. She had come to keep the promise. She walked to the competition platform, the real one, with the calibrated plates and the Federation judges. Harriet Lofton followed, because a sanctioned pull needs an official, and Marigold followed with the record still open, and the crowd pressed close. Odessa's arm was not fully healed. Everyone at the officials' table could see it. Harriet Lofton, who had watched 1,000 lifters make bad decisions, quietly asked her if she was sure, because a judge who respects an athlete will always give her the chance to stop. And Odessa said the thing that let the room understand the stone in her chest. She said, "My coach had a number. He never got it. I told him I would." She named the number. It was heavy. It was not her old max, but with a hurt shoulder it was a serious risk, and the room understood that she was not here to beat Dyson at his own game of spectacle. She was here to pay a debt to a dead man in the only currency he ever accepted. Dyson, humiliated and cornered and desperate to reclaim the floor, did the last stupid thing. He said he would match it. He said if the janitor pulled it, he would pull it too, and pull it clean, and remind everyone who the strongest at Iron Meridian really was. He thought he could turn the ending back into a contest he would win. Harriet Lofton looked at him with 30 years of contempt for men who treat a platform like a stage, and said the Federation would judge both pulls by the same standard, and that a lift was only good if it was clean, and that she personally would call it. They loaded the bar to the number. The room froze the way the thumbnail always promised. the second Odessa's hands found the bar. Because now they knew. Now every phone that had filmed her failure was filming this, and the caption was already rewriting itself in 100 pockets. She set her feet the way Wendell taught her. She set her back. She braced. She thought about a room with a leaking roof and a man who said the bar only asks one question. She drove the floor away, slow, patient, the way you carry a stone you have carried for 11 months, and the bar came up past her knees, where it had failed her before, and the shoulder screamed and held, and she locked it out at the top, and Harriet Lofton, watching for the smallest fault, waited a beat, 2 beats, and gave the signal. Good lift. The number existed in the world now, in a body Wendell Outlaw had trained. Odessa set it down with control, and did not celebrate, and stood there breathing while the room came apart around her. Because the promise was kept, and the dead man had his number, and nothing anyone did next could take that back. Then it was Dyson's turn, and the engine lets the competition resolve honestly. He was strong. That had always been true, and a real story does not pretend otherwise. He had pulled this weight before in his videos, but he had never pulled it with the whole floor knowing what he was, with the Federation judging him clean instead of a phone judging him kind, with a woman who had just done it right standing at the edge of the platform not gloating, only watching. He chalked up. He set the bar. He touched 2 fingers to his collarbone before he bent down. That private tell, now public forever. And he pulled, and the bar came up. But his form broke under the eyes that had never held him accountable before. His back rounded, he hitched it up his thighs in 3 ugly heaves, and Harriet Lofton, who called both pulls by the same standard as she had promised, waited and shook her head. No lift. Not because he was not strong, because he had never once in his life been made to do it clean, and now, when it counted, in front of everyone, the difference between real and viral stood exposed on the platform between 2 people. One who had done the work, and one who had sold the appearance of it. That was the competition. Not who was stronger in the abstract. Who could stand in the light and be judged true. Odessa could. Dyson could not. The room saw it. The new world came fast, and the dominoes fell as specific moments, not a summary. The live stream, still running through the whole peak, did in reverse what the humiliation videos had done. The clip of Dyson admitting on a live mic that he hunted a hurt woman's injury for content, spliced against the clip of Odessa pulling her dead coach's number clean under a Federation judge, went to 4 million views in a week under a caption nobody at Iron Meridian wrote. The sponsors who paid Dyson to be aspirational read the room in about a day. 2 of them dropped him by email before the weekend, and the rest went quiet, which in that world is the same as gone. The Federation, protecting the sport's name, issued a public statement condemning the exploitation of an injured athlete for content, and quietly made clear that Dyson Meacham would not be sanctioned to compete under their banner. The strongest man at Iron Meridian became a man with no platform, in both meanings of the word. Kingsford lost the thing he had traded everyone for. The gym's name was now attached, permanently and searchably, to the video of a woman being fired on the floor for the crime of being hurt while lifting. Members quit in a wave. The Federation pulled its association. The bank that held his lease read the news like everyone else. Within 2 months, the raw concrete kingdom with the beautiful accidental parking lot was under new ownership, and the new owners did not keep his name on anything. And when people searched Alton Kingsford, they did not find an entrepreneur. They found the manager who erased a champion and got caught trying to delete the tape. Marigold Tillery paid the price the engine promised, and got something back it did not require. She lost the orbit. Dyson's remaining friends in the industry blackballed her exactly the way she had feared, and for a stretch of weeks she was a coach with no gym in a city where the gyms all talked. But Harriet Lofton had watched her stand up with a laptop when standing up cost her everything, and the Federation needed people who would protect athletes instead of exploit them, and they made her an offer. It was not extravagant. It was a coaching and athlete welfare role at a regional level, modest pay, real purpose. She took it. Her mother's bills got paid a different way. She had learned, at 38, that the thing she had spent 15 years not doing was the thing that finally let her sleep. Grover Waddle, the old man on the platform, found out what he had witnessed. He watched the clip of the woman who once fixed his weight without a word pull a dead man's number clean, and he understood that she had done for Wendell exactly what she had done for him, and he started training at the gym under its new ownership and told the story to anyone who would listen. The way old men keep the important things alive by refusing to shut up about them. And Odessa Naylor. The offers came, of course, the sponsors who suddenly remembered her, the meets that wanted her name on the roster, the comeback the internet demanded. She took almost none of it. The shoulder was what it was, and she was honest with herself about the number she had pulled, that it was likely the last heavy pull that arm would ever make, and that she had spent it on the right thing. She let the sport come to her on her terms. She took a coaching position at a small gym in a different part of the city, a place with a slightly leaking roof and cheap bars, and a wall she painted herself. And she taught people who would never compete how to read a shoulder and drive a floor away, and do the work whether or not anyone was watching. Above the door, where the members could see it every day, she put 5 words, not her own. The bar only asks one question. The coda states nothing, the way the engine wants. On a Sunday, months later, Odessa was closing her small gym alone in the half-dark she had always loved. Marigold came by, off the clock, with 2 coffees, because they had become the kind of friends that only get made in the wreckage of something. They did not talk about Dyson. They did not talk about the videos or the firing or the 4 million views. Marigold set a coffee on the chalk-dusted counter, and Odessa took it, and the two of them stood in the empty room looking at the empty platform, and Marigold nodded at the 5 words over the door, and Odessa nodded back. And neither of them said the number, because the number belonged to a man in another state under a leaking roof who finally had it. Outside, the light moved across a parking lot nobody had planned to make beautiful, and the bar on the platform waited in the dark for the next person who would do the work. Have you ever kept doing the right thing in a room that had already decided you were nothing, holding a promise no one around you could even see? What would it cost you to finally speak up for someone the way Marigold did, knowing it might take everything you built, and would you pay it? Tell me in the comments about a time you were underestimated and did the work anyway. If this story moved you, subscribe for more like it, and share it with one person who has ever been judged by their surface before anyone bothered to learn their substance.